Mr. Gottschalk's here, Mr. Pincher's here. At this time, I'll call the meeting back to order. Madam Clerk, item 2.
Report, Charter Revision Commission final report.
Okay. What's your pleasure on item 2, Council? Mr. Cowper?
Your Honor, for the purposes of discussion, I would make a motion that the Council accept the final report presented from the Charter Revision Commission.
Seconded by Mr. Arcani for purposes of discussion. I do want to point out that Mr. Moreno, who is the chairperson of the Charter Revision Commission, is in the room. So if anybody wants to ask any questions about it. Thinking of the commission, it was best, but he can certainly put thoughts in people's heads. So with that, motion made and seconded. Discussion. Mr. Rotella.
Thanks, Your Honor. Just for a point of reference through the Chair of the Corporation Council. Attorney Pinner, could you just briefly touch on what we need to do, our time limits, our majorities, our supermajorities, and that kind of thing, where we are in the process tonight? I know this has been a very long haul for all concerned, and we've had several meetings on this, and each time I think it helps me at least if we're brought up to date on what our obligations are.
Mr. Rotella, through the Mayor, Attorney Gottschalk has been involved with the Charter Revision for the last 17 months. It's all right with you and the others. Attorney Gottschalk would be best suited to answer you in full. Thank you.
Mr. Gottschalk.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So, the long 18 months of travail has passed. And at your last opportunity, you made a number of recommendations to the Commission. The Commission considered all of them and has presented a final report to you. The final report adopts five of your recommendations. The first is with respect to Section 3-4, in which the Commission removed the reference to authorized representatives in the context of public speaking. The second is with respect to 4-2. There are 5 of them. The second is with respect to Section 4-2, dealing with donations. 2 changes were made to the language that you see before you. One deals with the expansion of the scope of donations to include services, and the second relates to the notion of an aggregate series of donations equaling $1,000. Third, there was a proposal that you made, or a recommendation that you made, dealing with the title of Administrative Assistant to the Mayor. That was changed to Chief of Staff. Fourth, there was a change in Section 7-8, dealing with public improvement assessments. That was deleted to leave essentially what was there before, dealing with just sewer and water. And fifth, there was a recommendation to review again the limits on borrowing that could be authorized by the Mayor and the Common Council without the requirement of a referendum. And that was changed to create an annual cap of $3 million. So, to answer Councilman Rotella's question, what you need to do next is to either approve the amendments contained in the final report, reject the amendments contained in the final report, or any separate recommendations that are contained in here. So you can, for example, as was done, make a motion, a global motion, to adopt all of these changes and vote it up or down, or you can amend it to remove and, in essence, reject any separate provisions that are contained in here. There'll be other things you need to do, for example, sending it to either a special or a regular election for a vote within 15 months. You have to publish it. You have to determine whether it's be presented in one or more questions, and you have to create the form of those questions. But you don't do all of that tonight, and so first things first, accept or reject these recommendations.
if I may follow up?
Please proceed, Mr. Raton.
Voting, majority, supermajority,
All the votes you'll take tonight will be majority votes.
simple majority.
Yes.
And finally, how much time do we have to do this? I understand the clock started to tick when we received the report, or it was entered into the town clerk's office. The council, I believe, has 15 days to act on this, starting when? Tonight?
Start 15 days to act on it, starting when the final report is submitted.
And when was that?
I believe that was this morning.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that overview, Mr. Groucho. Mr. Shinisi.
Just a point of question, just a follow-up to Councilman Rotello's question. When you mentioned to accept or reject the changes, does that mean line item by line item, these changes? They said, for example, the 4-year term. That 4-year term deals with a lot of positions. For example, can we say we accept a 4-year mayor term, but not the council, or a town clerk, but not treasurer? Can we actually go into that detail as for the 4 years, so we can accept, like I said, in recap, the 4 years for the mayor, but not the 4 years for the council? Can you do that?
You can reject any of the provisions that were presented to you. So there, for example, is language dealing with 4-year terms for council members. You could reject that and leave 4-year terms intact for everyone else. That's what you chose to do.
Mr. Groucho, just for clarity here, I can just ask a question myself and just make sure we're clear. The remaining items that are in the report, which the council did not provide direction about, are deemed accepted. Is that correct? Or can they once again reopen those items again tonight?
The council can vote to accept or reject each and every proposal that's in here, whether or not it was the subject of a recommendation.
Just want to be clear about that. Mr. Simon.
Thank you, Your Honor. With regard to 4-year terms, I think we've all discussed this and many of these other issues time and time again. Say my concerns publicly, I don't believe that there is a learning curve here. I also don't believe or accept the argument that having 4-year terms removes the politics from the political process. I think it just removes or distances the politicians from the public. I think that direct contact more often with the voters through a 2-year election cycle is important for the city. I don't think there is an outcry or need demonstrated for having 4-year terms. So with that, I move to amend the main motion to remove all recommendations for 4-year terms for any elected officials in this document.
Second. The motion's been made to strike reference to 4-year terms throughout the document for all elected officials. Seconded by Mr. Perkins. We'll now entertain discussion related to this issue. Mr. Seabury is up first.
Thank you, Your Honor. Although I see the logic in 2-year terms, all that I've known as a councilman are 2-year terms, and all that I've known for campaigning for council seat is every 2 years. And contrary to what a lot of folks have presented to me in discussion, I kind of enjoyed going door to door. Something I said. Anyway, I frankly don't have a problem with 2 years. But I'm going to tell you also, I don't have a problem with 4 years. And speaking with colleagues, I don't think that it's such a big deal to ask the voters their opinion. There comes only a few times presentations to us where the voters actually can make their decisions known. And I don't see where we're wasting any time or we're causing any problems to ask them to decide what they want to do for the elected officials, whether it's a 4-year term or a 2-year term. And the concept when we had the last meeting and the folks that came before us, the folks that came before us tonight said that they were in favor of a 2-year term, and it was overwhelming that the number of people that presented to us were in favor of a 2-year term. you know, in all due respect, maybe there are 30, 40 people in the two different occasions, but this is a city of about 70,000. And so, given that, I don't see any problem at all presented to the voters in a very pure democratic process. So that's my feeling on the motion.
Okay, Mr. O'Connor.
Thank you, Your Honor. As everyone here knows, I'm in full agreement with Councilman Seabury on this. I'd like to hear what the people have to say about this issue. I enjoyed my campaigning a couple years ago and look forward to it again. There's so few times people get a chance to speak about this. And I spoke to a lot of my constituents about this, and it was pretty well mixed. So, and I was kind of fairly surprised at that result. And I will strongly suggest that we peel this thing off to be its own, to stand on its own, so that people can vote on a single issue. So I will be. I would like to see the people get a chance to vote on this. Thank you.
Mr. O'Connor, Mr. Calvo.
Thank you, Your Honor. To echo Mr. Seabury's and Mr. Arcante's comments, I am completely undecided whether it should be a 2 or 4 year term. And on that basis, as a representative of the people, I don't see any harm in letting the voters of the city decide this matter. And I think I'm in a very funny position sitting here voting on whether I should serve 2 or 4 years. And I think what happens is if we kill the 2 year term, or if we kill the 4 year term tonight, voters never have a say in this. And that's the principle that I am really against. I'm against the voters not having their proper say in this. I feel the voters in this city are educated and experienced, and I think they understand the issues, and they will understand this issue. And I will be happy, as Mr. Arcante said, to make a motion, if this passes, to break this out into a separate question on the ballot in November. So with that being said.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Visconti's next.
Thank you, Your Honor. I respectfully have to disagree with my colleagues on the other side of the dais. I read an editorial in the local newspaper this past weekend. I think you really hit your nail on the head. For once. I didn't say it, for once. And I've seen it in a few elections. I've had to go walk in the streets. I've talked to a lot of people concerning this issue. One, we have a lot of voter apathy in this city, and a couple of things happen. Either people just don't come out and vote like we would like them to, and number two, if you put something like this in a ballot, they automatically think, well, it's here, it's in front of me, this must be what everybody wants on the council, so they vote for it. Well, we took a vote not too long ago when it was 12-7, and we said no. I don't know where the commission was sitting that night, but I think they just they did their homework a little bit wrong on this one issue. So I cannot support putting this on the ballot. Thank you.
Mr. Visconti, Mr. Rotella has his hand up.
Thanks, Your Honor. Normally when we send a referendum out to the city and force people to go out and vote for it, or we request that they go out and vote for it, it's something that we feel is important for the city of Danbury. It's something we believe in to the extent that, we're actually requesting you take some time out for your day and go into a voting booth and pull a lever. It's not something that we ask you to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, or even yearly basis. We don't have referenda every year. We don't have them for a couple of years. I can't remember in my limited political history in Danbury, going back 10 or 15 years, ever sending an item to the voters that we did not ourselves profoundly believe in. I have never remembered ever sending anything off to the voters to see what they think. This is something that is part and parcel, almost an extension of the old days of when New England towns had town hall meeting style government, when we would ask everyone to come in, leave the farm at the bottom of winter and come to a small meeting house and vote on something that was critical for the future of the city. We don't do that anymore. We can stay home and watch this on TV and not have to come out to these things. But every once in a while, we ask you to vote for something that we believe is critical to the city's future. What I'm hearing tonight are people who are against four-year terms and people who are ambivalent about four-year terms. I have not heard from anybody who thinks four-year terms is critical to the survival of the city. Furthermore, this business about asking what the people thinks is great if the people, allowing the people to decide on an issue of this importance is a wonderful idea. If the people themselves have telegraphed to us by phone or email or even in person that they find the two-year term in this particular instance too short. I have never in my career had one constituent ever tell me that they were in favor of extending the terms. It's never happened. They talk to me about traffic, they talk to me about immigration, they talk to me about the Cadwood Lake, they talk to me about a million things. The length of term has never been up. We hear an awful lot about money, and we'll be speaking about that tonight with the bonding issues, where there is a debate on this council to not allow people to have the choice of how much we should be spending, that we should raise the limit so high that they do not get the right to vote for this. So there's some tension on both sides here between keeping the power on the council and allowing the people to have more of a town hall meeting style government. I am not in favor of four-year terms. I run every 2 years. I am not a big fan of campaigning. I do it. It's my obligation to the voters. I need to go out and talk to them. I don't restrict it to the campaign season. I speak to my constituents as often as I can. Sometimes they stop me on the street. Sometimes I'll take a weekend off in the middle of the year and just talk to people in a particular neighborhood. And I'm fairly responsive to emails and things like that. I have a pretty good idea where the constituents are. But as someone who doesn't like to campaign, you are hearing someone who is in favor of a shorter campaign cycle. Even if it means more work for me, the end result is a better democracy for candidates. I am in favor of two-year terms. I will vote tonight against sending this off to the referendum because I feel that by the time November rolls around, people will walk into the booth thinking that this is something that we want, thinking it's something that we feel is so important, we're asking them to vote for it, and I think would be genuinely surprised to see this on the ballot and find out that it was something the overwhelming majority of the council is not in favor of. Thank you very much.
Mr. Curran.
I'm going to have to agree with Mr. Seabury about some of the people. I've been to several of these meetings. This is our second major one. Same people that speak at every one of them. Now, I might have some weird friends, but I've gone out and actually asked people about the two-year term and the four-year term. And you know what? Most of the people that I've talked to wanted a four-year term. I don't know, maybe I got weird friends. Now, I don't think...
I'm not even going to go there.
I know. Now, I'm not sure how I would even vote about it, having been involved in it. I think the council should be a two-year term. But I don't think the mayor should be a two-year term. I think the mayor should be a four-year term. And I'm going to be voting that way. But I think the public should have a right to vote on this, not just us 21 people here. You know, I have to laugh. Everybody said, don't throw it to the public, don't throw it to the public. Well, we throw everything else to the public. We can't spend their money without sending it to them. We got to have a bond issue to send it to them. Well, this is pretty darn important. And I think that the people in Danvers should be able to vote whether they want to have a four-year term for the mayor.
Okay, any other discussion? I'm going to have Mr. Shinisi go first, and Mr. Sadi, you can have the second.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. When this issue first came up, I was originally for four-year terms. I thought it would be good for the city. But after looking into it more deeply and reading the charter, I don't think the charter goes deep enough to address a four-year term. And I'm going to call it the what-if factor. There's everybody here has those questions. What if something happens? And you can ask many of the other municipalities that have four-year terms that have problems. And they can't deal with those problems because the state doesn't give them that power. So a four-year term at this time is not a good idea. Until the state gives the municipalities more control over its charter, I don't think we should go that level at this time. 2 years has worked, And I think it will continue to work until the state steps up to the plate and allows certain provisions to be incorporated in our charter. Until that happens, we're going to have to vote against it before we turn.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney. Mr. Sadi gets a second shot.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to address some of my colleagues' concerns or statements, the public has had a significant opportunity to express their opinions on this, to speak on it. Many of them spoke at this last meeting, and in all candor, I can't remember the last time I can, the ICE agreement, when so many people spoke on an issue. So I think that there is a significant representation of the sentiment out there with regard to this concern for 2 or 4 year terms. If the question is split, in all honesty, I think that the public most likely will reject 4 year terms. But I do think we have an obligation, just like when we send bonding to the voters for referendum. What do we try to do? We try to put together the best package we can for the voters to vote on, because it has our endorsement, our stamp of approval based on our deliberative process here, the Commission's deliberative process, and us listening to the public. So while there are people saying the voters should decide, the voters ultimately will vote on the recommendations here. They could vote the whole charter down and keep what we have. But I do think as a deliberative body, we have an obligation to put our beliefs into what we send out to the voters. If you don't believe in this amendment, if you don't believe that we should have 2 year terms, fine, I understand that. But I don't buy the argument that, well, you know what? Let's just put it out to the voters without giving them our expression of what we believe in as being the right thing for the city. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Sadi. Further discussion on Mr. Sadi's motion. Mr. Levy.
Thank you, Your Honor. For all the reasons, I've been to many of the Charter Revision Commission meetings. Somewhere along the way, I think that they get a little sidetracked in maybe the politics of this, or people that strongly believe in this issue. But I don't see anything where this is going to improve the operation of government. I see that's really what we want to do. Is when we do charter revision, we want to do streamlining of government, bring it up to being current with current practices. And I don't see any value, I don't see any great need for this type of thing. As a matter of fact, the negative side of it is what we have suffered across this country. And that is that we make it too easy for people not to fulfill their obligation as Americans to be involved in their communities and do it on a regular basis. It's not a spectator sport. They have to show up and they actually have to participate. And I do it on a voluntary basis, like everybody else sitting here and many hundreds of others. I go out and bang on doors and look for people's opinion and get connected. Connect people with the government that we have. But the real deal breaker for me is that we look around Connecticut and we see all of the cities that have troubled communities, Waterbury, Bridgeport, now Hartford. We have no recall provision that if, in the event, we should have a questionable individual, and we've had some questionable individual I know of in the past.
Hey, Mr. Levy, you're going very thin ice on that.
No names were mentioned. But there is no recall provision. And the first thing, as I've said before, out of every one of these individuals, whether it's Waterbury, Bridgeport, and now Hartford, I will not resign. And they stay right in office, and the public takes a back seat, and policy takes a back seat while they do that. There's never been a problem here. I've gone to Charter Revision Commission meetings. There are very, very few people that have ever spoken in behalf of the 4-year term. Nobody has been able to say what it would really do in a positive way. And there's many negative factors. If we were to institute this across the board, it would take 8 years to complete the cycle on the Board of Education alone. Here's an area that our country is in trouble with right now, and we're going to put it into a stressed condition where we're going to now have a turnover in the Board of Education it's going to take 8 years to implement this 4-year
type of elected office situation, which, again, I think is not reporting back to the public often enough. Of course, the other aspect of it is, even if we're right, even if the Charter Revision Commission was right in their recommendations, they're wrong, because everybody is speaking out against it. So we have to follow the public will. And the public puts us here, 21 members, the mayor and his staff, they put us here to make decisions for them, not to ask them questions that they don't know all the implications on. They're going to take our word for it that what we suggest to them is a good idea. And originally, I thought the 4-year idea was a great idea myself. And then when I found out that there's no recall, that was a deal breaker for me. I just didn't see any value to it. And as I continue to look into it, I see no value for it. And in every one of the votes that took place, there were very marginal votes, except on this council, which was a 12-7 vote, which I consider not a cliffhanger. And the Charter Revision, it was 2 individuals switched their votes for the many times they voted on this issue. And it was always a very marginal vote. In the cases where it was a marginal vote, the whole concept should have been disregarded because there was no mandate for change. And that's where I'll be voting. I'll be voting against, not even offering this to the public. It doesn't serve government at all. Thank you.
You'll be voting for the amendment, though? Okay, just want to clarify. The amendment being to strike reference to 4-year term. Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Your Honor. This has been a very difficult issue. First of all, I'd like to thank the Commission for their 17 months spent doing a fantastic job. Regarding the issue of a 2 or 4-year term, for me, being 67 years old, what the hell, excuse me, I probably would not make 4 years anyway, so that's number one. But all kidding aside, I really feel that we need to listen to the people, the public, when they come before us. And tonight, I really respect those that come out and are willing to express themselves in a most democratic way. And basically also, from being out there and having breakfast with whomever and things like that, people have been asking me about that. And from what I'm getting is that most of them say, hey, it's just too much, it's too long of a time, and that you're better off to go to 2 years. Then there's the issue that comes up about, well, the learning curve is so difficult. That's a lot of baloney. You know, I mean, it doesn't take a lot to be able to sit up here and see what's going on within a couple months. But I know that many of us would like to say, well, send it to the public, but that's not what we should do tonight. I really think that we ought to just make the decision and get on with it. Just keep it at 2 years, and so be it. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. Any further discussion, Mr. Burns? Thank you, Your Honor.
And motor fuels. I mean, a lot of the departments have cut a tremendous amount, and I did go through that. Now, my question I have is, now when I look at the total balance, not yet for revenues not collected, like 30.4 million. And then I look at the expenses not yet expected not to pay, it's 76 million. So it's a $50 million difference between the two. So the question is, either we have a lot of cash sitting in our accounts, or we're going to have to cut at least a lot of, besides expenditures, are we going to have to go into salaries? How are you going to make up that deficit? Because $50 million is a lot to make up in 4 months.
Keep in mind that the state
26 is the state.
Is a huge part of that revenue number that you're looking at. And they have, they send out payments usually a couple times a year. Some of them it's once. And it usually comes around, February, March, April time frame. Some of them come as late as June. And that's, when you're looking at that, that's pretty much what you're seeing right there. And that's the revenue side. And that, I was on the phone today with the state in regards to some of our other items.
I knock on a lot of doors, and to knock once every 4 years, I would be so far removed from the voter, it wouldn't be funny. It wouldn't be fair to the voters either. So I'll be supporting Councilman Sadi's motion to remove these 4-year language from the charter. Thank you.
I don't know what everyone is so afraid of. I truly think that the council should be a 2-year limit, but I have no problem asking the public what they think. We don't have all of the public here. We have a limited few that have expressed their opinion, and I just don't see, one of the questions were, when we put the question out, it looks like it's our stamp of approval. It's the way you write the question. It's a real simple question. Do you prefer 2 years or 4 years for elected officials? That's not a way of slanting it in any way for the person who's voting to think that's what we feel. I just would like to see what everybody thinks about it. I personally think that we should have 2 years, but I have no problem letting people express their opinion and vote for it on their own. I think that the people in Danbury are smart enough to do so. Thank you.
And Mrs. Stanley, further discussion related to Mr. Sadi's amendment? Okay, seeing none, I think we're ready to vote. We're going to ask for a roll call vote. I'm going to restate
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. I will restate the question.
Thank you.
Ready now? Yes. Okay, the motion on the floor, the amendment on the floor by Mr. Sadi would be to strike any reference of 4-year term anywhere in the document. Is that? Yes, correct. Okay. So a yes vote would be to strike 4-year term, and no vote would be not to strike. To leave excuse me. A yes vote would be to strike the 4-year term, and a no vote would be to leave the language as is in the package. Right. Yeah, it refers to revisions. Yes, that's legislative text. Okay. So with that, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
McMahon. No. Negerchef. No. Alice.
No.
Pellegrino.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Sconti.
Yes.
Shenice.
Yes.
Esposito.
Yes.
Sadi.
Yes.
Cabo.
No.
Rotello.
Yes.
Gates.
Yes.
Arcanti.
No.
Curran.
No. Knapp.
Yes.
Levy.
Yes.
Riley.
Yes.
Seabury.
No.
Stanley.
No.
Okay. Amendment passes 11A, and any reference to 4-year term would be stricken from the document as presented. Any other, we still have a motion before for adoption of the charter revision questions. Any other discussion about other items on the in the charter revision document? Mr. Sadi.
Sir, I just want to thank the Commission. Most of us were there at the meeting the other night, and aside from this issue, as other council members have said, the overwhelming majority of recommendations from the council were adopted, some slight variations on those, but overwhelmingly adopted. The only thing that I will be voting in favor of sending this now with the 2 years. My only hesitation on this was Section 3.3, which we can't change, concerning the appointment of legislative assistant. But aside from that, I think we have a better document going forward now. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Sadi. Further discussion, Mr. Adele.
I would like to open the floor up to discussion on the bonding limit. It was my understanding that the original limit this year was $500,000. The first revision brought it up to, I believe, 2.5 per occurrence with a $5 million cap. And at the last meeting, President Cabo had an interesting suggestion, which I think I had to leave the meeting early, which I think was adopted, that we raise the cap from $1 million. I'm sorry, I think the original cap was $1 million in the revision, and President Cabo had an interesting notion to raise it up to what was 2.5 or 3? Right.
I think
you have it.
Mr. Gatcho, just recap what the new language is.
I'm a little just confused about where we are with bonding now. We got rid of the single limit, but we lowered the ultimate limit.
Mr. Gatcho, just give us a summary of the bonding question.
The proposal is before you right now. It's pretty simple. $3 million in the aggregate in any 1 year.
There's a $3 million cap.
Right. The limit is $3 million, but there's no individual cap except the $3 million.
That's a good point.
I think that's okay. It's, I believe, 600% higher than what it is at present. However, you can make the argument that at present there is no aggregate cap per year. I kind of differ with that interpretation. It's a floor fight that came and went a year ago. But it is technically true. There is no aggregate limit specified in this present document, not the revised document, the present document that we're existing under. So that any cap, if you are, if you lean towards limiting the council in what they can spend in a calendar year, if that's your persuasion, any cap would probably be, for you guys, a good idea. The issue, I guess, we had was that the original per occurrence limit at $1 million was considered to be too small for certain non-emergency items, because that's addressed separately in this document, but let's say extraordinary items. I believe Chief Curran mentioned using a couple of fire trucks in one particular instance, which actually happened in the city. Some of these bridge items and roof items are now getting pretty pricey. I know I'm kind of in the construction business myself, and I know that if you don't have the budget for something, you can break individual projects up into smaller items. I was concerned about the $1 million limit of some other people, but I think I'm willing to make that compromise. We've lowered the ultimate cap in the revision from 5 to 3. We've raised the per occurrence limit from 1 to 3. They've both met in the middle. I'm taking a little bit less, I think, on the per occurrence limit. I'm not that comfortable with it, but I'm much more comfortable at 3 than I was at 5. I'm going to support this. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Littell. Further discussion related to charter revision, Mr. Sadi.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to put the bonding issue in a little bit more context, with the will of the council going from 4-year to 2-year term, and with the bonding limit per calendar year going from 5 to 3, you've effectively lowered a potential of $20 million in bonding in a single administration and council term to $6 million in bonding. So I think you have to look at it both in the specific annual dollars as well as the effective impact of the charter as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Sadi. We just also interject that you may have all the bonding limit in the world, but if the financial conditions aren't right for borrowing, you're not going to go out and borrow. Trust me on that. With that, somebody else with their hand down. Mr. Visconti's
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to take this opportunity to also thank the Charter Commission and Chairman Marino for the fine work that his commission did, the long and hard dedicated hours listening to the public and us, the council, and all the proposed changes that we would like to see. And I think in the end, I think we have a very good charter recommended changes. I think it's going to make this a little more efficient going forward. So again, thank you to the Charter Commission.
Further discussions related to charter revision? See none, then I guess we're ready to take a vote. All in favor of sending this off to the voters, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries unanimously. Excuse me? As amended, yes. Next steps, Mr. Gatcho will present a ballot question which he's going to craft for us that we'll have to put that on the agenda. It'll be a perfunctory ministerial move just to authorize the actual wording of the question that will appear on the ballots. As somebody pointed out earlier, there's 47 spots on the ballot. So what we're going to have to do is have a pretty succinct question, and then we're going to print up some handouts as to what's in it and what's not in it, so folks that need information can get it. Plus, we'll do some stuff on the web also, so people want to read up some of the details, because you can't put an entire revision on the ballot, otherwise the ballot will be 800 pages long. So, having said that, I want to congratulate the council tonight on some good work, very good debate, very positive. I think that's the way government ought to operate. I want to thank you, Carlo, Mr. Chairman, for all your hard work. Yeah, just living the dream, Martin. And I want to thank the council again for the teacher's contract, all the hard work that went into that as well. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Tellis, Mr. Negerson, all in favor of adjourn, please signify by saying aye.